Hello everybody and welcome to this special drum podcast in collaboration with Facebook Gaming. Gaming is now the most lucrative entertainment medium in the world. It's increasingly social, and I'm sure that a lot of the people who are listening to this podcast might not even consider themselves gamers despite the fact that they play. At the same time, changing consumer habits and changing tech trends mean that there are endless opportunities for brands, marketers, and consumers to really take advantage of this burgeoning social gaming movement. So to discuss those opportunities, I'm joined by two absolutely fantastic guests whose expertise spans the breadth of the industry, and we're going to go over what these trends mean for brands, marketers, and ultimately for the gamers themselves. So Tim, can I ask you to introduce yourself first, please?
Sure. Hi, Chris. My name is Tim Lyon, and I lead EMEA marketing for Facebook Gaming. Facebook Gaming is in the business of helping developers and publishers bring their games to market and grow and build and monetize games. And yeah, that's what we do.
Fantastic. And Natalia, you actually come at it from a slightly different angle, which is kind of from the marketing side. So, what does Anzu do?
Hi, everyone. I'm Natalia, and I'm leading the marketing efforts at Anzu, the world's leader of in-game advertising. So our technology blends real-world brand ads directly into video games, esports tournaments, and live streams.
Nice, fantastic. And I'm sure we're going to touch upon both esports and the benefits and the opportunities around live streaming as we go. But to begin with, Tim, Facebook Gaming actually has a piece of research out. So I wondered, and sort of a report into the changing face of social gaming in particular. So I wondered if you could maybe take us through how that came about, some of the methodologies, and ultimately how people can access it.
Absolutely. We've released our second annual sort of future-looking report, but we pivoted a little this year for obvious reasons. We were preparing our view on industry trends for developers and marketers. So we work with an internal team who do both business research and consumer research, and they commissioned a study through Interpret of about 13,500 self-reporting gamers. And I'm going to read my notes here, Chris, because I can't commit all this stuff to memory.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the markets that we covered, again, there was 9 markets in total. It's Brazil, Canada, Germany, France, Japan, Korea, UK, US, and Vietnam. And they ran the survey between July and October of last year. And the idea was to try to understand, were there new people coming to mobile gaming particularly, and what were the habits that new cohort brought? And so we had 2 cohorts: the new players who hadn't played sort of prior to March, April, depending on your market, of last year.
So to what extent then did you find that these are genuinely new behaviours among this fresh cohort of people who are coming in? And to what extent is it an extension of, the existing trends that we've seen among, movement towards mobile and social gaming, even from what you might think of as legacy gamers?
I mean, it was kind of fascinating. We were frankly surprised. We had hypotheses around what we thought we would learn. But firstly, the scale was unbelievable, and you can see this in this report we've released. But, the UK audience, mobile gaming audience, grew by 50%. And again, US was 30%, Germany was about 25%. Across Germany, the US, UK, and Korea, there's nearly 50 million people who were reporting as being new to mobile gaming.
That's huge.
It's enormous. I mean, we thought it was a big addressable audience already, but the fact that it's able to grow in a market like the UK, which was considered a sophisticated market, a lot of developers export their games into the UK as a key market. There was a feeling not of saturation, but you wouldn't have expected 50% growth. We expected it to be more like the profile of what we consider a casual gamer, who tend to skew slightly older, skew slightly more female, play fairly short sessions, and play mostly sort of puzzle and match 3 type games. But interestingly, what we found is that in the results of the research, this new cohort in every one of our markets but Korea, and I'll come back to that, skewed considerably younger and preferred more core genres and had a higher propensity to spend in game. So that kind of pivoted our hypothesis to thinking, okay, who are these people? And, we can't prove this out necessarily, but our thinking is these are younger, probably console players and PC players who live at home with their families and aren't able to dominate the television and the console space in the house, and so have moved to mobile. So, and they still, casual and sort of hyper casual genres were still very much on top in terms of what was played.
Yeah.
But there was, a notable propensity towards more mid-core and core genres.
I suppose then the question is, Natalia, to what extent do you think that brands and potential, advertising partners understand who this gamer profile actually is and the opportunity that's around it?
First, Tim, the report is great, and it can be a great asset for all the marketers who want to understand the gaming audience better, who are trying to tap into this new media, and that's a great tool to get started. And Chris, to answer your question, I do think that marketers need more education around gaming audiences, who gamers are, how much they play, what their behavior is. They definitely need to know about the surge of gamers. Like, I was personally surprised to see 50% more gamers among the UK audience, and that's something that we need to communicate to the marketers and advertisers things. But still, marketers are a bit afraid of tapping into gaming, and some of them still think that gamers are teenagers who have no purchase power and they play in their backyards, and they're not the kind of audience that brand advertisers and marketers need to talk to, which is not true. And the Facebook report is just another proof that the gaming audience is super versatile, that it's growing, and it has a lot of purchasing power. And they're willing to spend time in games, and they're willing to talk to marketers, advertisers, and communicate with the brands they like within this ecosystem.
Tim, then, I suppose the question is, for anybody who's listening, the key question will be, are these likely to be behaviours that persist? And what from the report itself, is evidence either way to that?
It's a good question, Chris. And Natalia, thank you for your kind words. The report is, the work of a dedicated group of people across Facebook gaming, and it was a ton of work, but we really like to think that we can produce work that is valuable to the industry as a whole, and I think this is another example of our progress in that direction, but I appreciate you saying it's of value. Chris, I think we don't know. I mean, I think if we'd have done this, this podcast in October of last year or at the end of the summer, I might have confidently said, yes, I think, people who picked up the habit will probably, there will be some attrition and some sort of correction, but a lot of people will, play. They may play slightly less than what they're playing when they're sort of in stay-at-home measures and so on. It's hard to say. I think probably there will be a more sustained group of mobile players. I think you'll see a lot more people become more dedicated and probably even shift into, core genres. But, let's put it this way. From a business perspective, we hope that this is sustainable. I think for all of our clients and the publishers and developers, I think everyone thinks there'll be a slight correction, because I think people will want, should we be able to, we'll want to sort of go back to face-to-face socialization and so on again. So I think it'll be I don't know the right sort of pattern to give it, but I think it will correct. But I think off that correction, there'll be a bounce back to habits that were formed over the course of the last 12 months or so.
Nice. That's really good. And I suppose then, Natalia, the question is, are brands in a good position at the moment to take advantage of that, the persisting trends that have emerged? We think about the big gaming partnerships, whether it's Mercedes with Mario Kart, or all the brands that have launched within Animal Crossing as kind of these big temple brand partnerships. But for smaller and sort of slightly more niche brands, is there still an opportunity to reach these gaming audiences who, as we mentioned, are very lucrative?
Absolutely. Gaming has etched itself into the routine of people. I think that one of the challenges would be retention. But since the habit has been formed, I think that the new gamers will keep on playing, and that's a massive opportunity for advertisers and for brands to test this audience. And I'm sure, and I know, because that's what we see from our returning clients, that brand clients, that most of them will say yes and will come back, not only for mobile gamers, but PC and console as well.
And Tim, I wondered if we could dig slightly deeper into kind of the global opportunity here. You mentioned Korea earlier as being a slight outlier. I wondered if you could maybe dig into some of those geographic stats and the differences.
Yeah, Korea was slightly surprising because Korea looked a lot more like the profile that we expected, which was, the new cohort of players skewed older and more with a propensity to play more sort of casual genres. And I'm not an expert. My colleagues in APAC know that area of the business a lot better than I do. But my suspicion is that gaming culture in some of the Asian markets and markets like Korea, is that sort of mobile gaming penetration is already much deeper than in a lot of other markets, and so it's almost the same trend, but it's an inverse trend because the market is inverse to everywhere else. Where in the UK, you tend to have mobile players being more casual, and then suddenly less sort of casual, more core players gravitated to mobile. And I suspect, and I don't have any evidence to back this up, this is pure gut. In a very mobile, advanced market like Korea, you have a good penetration of mobile gamers, and then people who hadn't previously, an older cohort who hadn't previously played. Yeah, I think genre is an interesting element of it. And actually, just coming back to what Natalia was saying earlier about the opportunity for brands, and I think even your question earlier, Chris, about what this means for marketers and whether or not this new cohort will continue to play, I think that is, in a way, very much dependent on how games developers and marketers behave over the next little while. We have the changing privacy ecosystem that's taking place, and people are it's up to, I think it's going to be very much up to developers and advertisers to, very much to Natalia's point, to recognize that the diversity of the playing audience is far more extensive than perhaps the knee-jerk marketing would react to.
Yeah, absolutely. I think maybe then at this point, just a slight diversion, it's almost worth explaining the opportunities for advertising, because we have, in-game advertising on consoles, we have in-app advertising, which is obviously a huge area of growth for a lot of marketers as well. So what then are some of those real marketing opportunities we've seen? Is it sponsorship within game? Is it kind of having those in-game advertisings? Is it having, as you mentioned, targeted creative within apps? Where would you say some of the biggest opportunities lie that marketers should be aware of?
Well, I think certainly for mobile, I think there's a big cohort of mobile developers who, particularly in Europe as opposed to some of the other markets, who, in the casual end of the genre spectrum, operate on an in-app advertising model. So, free product and then ads, rewarded ads that get you level ups or power ups, or, you name it, skip a level, etc. And in-app advertising is very powerful. What we found, again, in this new cohort, but also generally we find across most mobile gamers, is that they are okay with these ads. There's a general thinking that people are like, oh, people hate ads. No one wants to see ads. But if the ads are good and there's a genuine value exchange, which is why things like rewarded video and sort of that value exchange in an ad, people are okay with it. I'm always of the opinion that there is a responsibility on advertisers to make the creative good. If you're going to have someone sit through an ad, the creative has to be, thoughtful. And we do see, again, in the report where the research came back and said what people want to see is actual gameplay, which is fine. That doesn't limit your creativity. Yeah. I think, there's an expectation that games advertisers can make amazing ads because they have the IP at their fingertips. And I think that's true. But I also think that there is an opportunity for more diverse ads that are suited to the, like Natalia said, the huge variety of who gamers are and why gamers play.
See, I think that's really interesting. And I think that, Natalia, you could probably expand on that then. Is there almost best practice for reaching gaming audiences in a way that, separates them from audiences in other mediums? You can't just take a video ad that would have worked on a different platform and, stick it next to a game. What really works well for game advertising?
Definitely. That's a very interesting discussion in terms of advertising, the possibilities that gaming gives to advertisers, and the technological advancements that are also enable advertisers to take advantage of the ecosystem. And I'm really happy to hear that gamers are finally happy with ad-supported models, since it makes sense for a long time in mobile, and more PC and console gamers and publishers are also ready to give this model a try. In terms of the creative, that's a tricky question. First, I should say that gaming gives vast opportunities in terms of creativity, and everything is possible. Like gaming as an ecosystem is marketers' dream, since whatever is not possible in other channels can be tested in gaming. And the example will be just a billboard in the game. Yeah, if you wanted to spend hundreds of thousands for billboards in real life, and you can't, you can give it a try in gaming.
Yeah.
The same applies to video or any other creatives. And then if we are talking about personalized ads, and if we are talking about customized interactive ads, then brands have really vast opportunities in terms of the way they can communicate with gamers, and gamers are ready for it.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, yeah, absolutely. I remember it was only a couple of years ago that we had sort of in-game ads within even, one of the AAA titles like Street Fighter V. And at the time, there was a backlash because people felt it was implemented badly. But now people have really come back around on it and sort of said, well, you know what, actually the ad-supported model works, well elsewhere. Let's give it a go in gaming. And there has been a really positive response.
True. Yeah, that's true. And now the industry is ready for it. And by the industry, I mean both advertisers, game developers, and gamers themselves. At Anzu, we put gamers first. And as a marketer, I have numerous discussions with gamers and ask them what kind of advertising you're comfortable with, what kind of ads you would want to see. And 95% of them confirm that they are totally fine with ads that are part of the gaming environment, that fit natural or just sit naturally in the game, and just enhance the realism of the game. And Tim is right when he says that advertisers are responsible for the creative side. And I also think that publishers need to share this responsibility in terms of accepting or not accepting, or giving the gamer audience to advertisers so that they can take the right decisions in terms of what to give a try, what not to give a try in terms of specific games, specific gamer, and we talk about personalized ads and the gaming experience in general. The creative point is very interesting, since at the moment the advertising industry is not ready yet to accept that they need to develop specific creative for in-game advertising or in-game space. And that's a kind of issue, since I see a lot of cases when advertisers come with social media creative or any other digital advertising creative, and there is too much text, the text is too small, or there is a call to action that is not super suitable for gaming spaces. And still there is a bit of work to be done in terms of just defining the creative guidelines for the gaming ecosystem, so that ads are even more naturally fit the gaming space.
I suppose then the question that naturally follows from that is, mobile and social are kind of inextricably linked now. So to what extent does, live streaming and the opportunities for social content and for community growth around that, what does that actually offer to marketers? Tim, I wonder if you could maybe delve into that a little bit.
Certainly a massive growth area that we're seeing at Facebook Gaming. We are starting to see watch hours. I think we surpassed a billion watch hours last year.
That's
I need to check
unreal
that stat,
numbers.
but yeah, it's incredible. And we are probably leading, one of the leading mobile streaming platforms, at fb.gg. But to be fair, games like, Among Us and so on have pushed that up a lot as well. I mean, it used to be live streaming was Twitch, and it was, AAA console games or esports games. Again, it's amazing to me when you think about esports and live streaming, the sheer scale of it.
Yeah.
And yet how much the broader media industry and advertising industry doesn't even think about it. And it's, and even when you put the numbers in front of people, I think sometimes they're like, yeah, but it's gaming. And I mean, gaming is so enormous and such an enormous opportunity for advertisers that and Natalia made the very good point that it's not just, young people who don't have any spending power. There are gamers that, and because we all started, I'm of an age where I had a Commodore 64 when I was a kid, and I don't fit the sort of 18 to 35 targeting profile of most gaming advertisers, let me put it that way. Yet I still play, and, I still respond to ads that, get my attention. So, but back to your point about live streaming, I think it's a huge opportunity. The amount of time people spend watching, like I said, is incredible. But we've seen, certainly saw on Twitch, the introduction of ads and so on has been tricky there.
Definitely, yeah.
And I think probably Natalia knows this space a lot better than I do. But I think, again, it has to be a value exchange.
Yeah, actually, I wondered if you could maybe elaborate on some of that, Natalia, because you mentioned esports and live streaming before. And to Tim's point there that, the introduction of ads to that space has been tricky. How ready are brands and audiences, gaming audiences, to actually encounter ads within that live streaming space?
Sure. So, first of all, I think that it's fair to say that both live game streaming and esports is a subset of gaming. So it's without games, without gaming, and the search in numbers, they won't be searching live streaming and esports numbers. That's number one. So, I'm considering this as part of the bigger ecosystem. And what I can say in terms of live streaming and esports in specific, I see that a lot of brands see it as a more premium space, and they want to give it a try, like an esports tournament, for example, jumping over mobile gaming audience, like PC and console games. Yeah, they want to, to go huge and to get started with sponsorships of something bigger. What I would recommend is to start with the basics as, in-game advertising and gaming as the advertising ecosystem is a relatively new channel. And that's why we need to, to give it a try from every angle, starting from games and then switching to live streaming and esports. As a platform, Anzu can provide advertisers with in-stream and in-tournament ads. That's, the way we call them. Although at the end of the day, these are the same in-game ads. What I can say in terms of the streaming and esports audience, and generally the audience and the end users are much more sophisticated these days. Everybody thinks about privacy. Everybody understands when we are displaying disruptive ad, and they are not happy with it anymore, right? They don't want this blunt advertising or the advertising that bloggers serve in a bad way. And that's again where in-game ads can help in terms of coming into the live streams. Since I'm as a streamer streaming a game where there are in-game ads that are part of the environment, and my viewers just perceive this ad as part of the gaming world. which gives many more eyeballs to advertisers. Like the increase is huge, since if the player base is like 1 million, for example, the live streaming viewer base can be 5 times more. So that's much more exposure. The exposure is supernatural and not disruptive. Everybody's happy with it. So I do think that it's going to be more and more popular. And I also see, as I mentioned at the beginning, that a number of brands want to get started with streaming and with esports.
I wondered, is there anything in particular in the report that really leapt out at you beyond kind of the growth in audience numbers? What are the sort of the big trends that have been elaborated on by the report that you think are worth noting for brands and advertisers?
Well, I think, you touched on it yourself, Chris, talking about the social play and the growth in sort of willingness and the value of gaming as a social connection. And I think that exists not just in the game itself, but we've seen huge explosion in gaming groups on Facebook, and the way people interact around games. And I think start to identify with a game as part of their identity, I suppose. So again, I think I come back to my point about, the idea around the need for the creative to answer the diversity audience. The thing that jumped out at me was, these aren't just a big monolithic group of people you can call gamers. That to me is the big thing, and it's becoming more and more apparent. The more research we do, the more work we do, the more we realize. And you can cut it like all sort of cohorts of segments of a market. You can cut it multiple different ways. You can cut it demographically, you can cut it geographically. But what I found interesting is cutting it by sort of propensity for genre and then the motivations for play. And in the report, we talk about, Natalia hit the nail on the head. A lot of people play mobile games to just pass time. Absolutely. But we saw some really interesting things. Like some people do play for a sense of a way to express their identity. And that's why you see games like Animal Crossing are a perfect example of that, or Lily's Garden, or, any of those sorts of games that, are ways for people to say, this is who I am, particularly when everyone's living remotely.
Yeah.
That's what became really interesting to me, is that, gaming has this sort of dual identity where it's, some people think, gaming, it's something I'm not necessarily proud to say I do. And then on the other side of that coin, there are people who say, through the games I play, this is part of my identity and this is how I express it. And that goes across, you can dig into each of these genres and each of the motivations for why people play certain genres. And I think, to me, that's almost a turnkey solution for games advertisers and for other brands to access this market, whether it's like you talked about, luxury brands or tech or telco or you name it. This audience, the way they play, the way they express themselves, the genres they play, the time they spend, all of those things are, they're identifying themselves. And what better for advertisers than sort of a self-reporting person who says, I'm interested in this, I feel like this, I look like that, and
yeah,
it's great for advertisers.
Oh my god, it's fantastic. And that's actually quite I almost quite emotional about the idea that sort of people do, and I recognize it in myself as well, this idea that some of the games you play are a core part of your identity. They're as valid a form of media as any other. And so, if you can base part of your personality on a book, on a movie, then why not these games that you kind of do invest so much of your time and your personality in? That's
absolutely.
It's such it's kind of a sort of a really hopeful way of looking at it, I think. And so to really start wrapping this discussion up, because there's been so many insights already, I wondered if we could maybe talk about where should smart marketers be placing their chips? Natalia, you spoke earlier about this idea that it's not just endemic brands who can really take advantage of that. So for people who are looking to get involved with gaming advertising now, where should they start looking?
Um, that's a good question, and that's I'm like speechless since as I mentioned before, the gaming offers so many opportunities for marketers. I think that smart marketers should first recognize the power of gaming. Again, the reports, as we've been talking about a lot, the Facebook report for 2021 is a great asset just to have another look or to reconsider the way you think about gaming and gamers as your target audience. That's number one. And then the advertisers target and the KPIs are very important to begin with. As I mentioned, every brand can find the right audience among gamers, since there are so many gamers that they're diverse and the audience is versatile. So it's not about whether I should tap into gaming. It's about how I should do this. Who is the target audience? What kind of platform do I want to target? Where do I want to get started with? And we see the search numbers across the globe in terms of the people who play games, the genres, platforms. So every marketer can find something for themselves within the gaming world, and I think that's the most important thing and the first thing that marketers should be aware of.
Well, I think we go back to the top of our conversation where we talked about this new cohort and whether they're here to stay, and I think probably the in summation they are here to stay, at least a large proportion of them, and people who were playing will continue to play. So there is a market in mobile gaming and in gaming in general, and it's growing and it's becoming much more mainstream. So I think advertisers of any stripe, but certainly from our point of view at Facebook Gaming, gaming advertisers, anyone who wants to launch a game, from indie developers to AAA publishers, there's a big cohort of gamers. There's a whole bunch of new gamers who've come into the mobile gaming business who look slightly different, and so I think connecting with that group and those groups is one of the big things that will need to happen in 2021. I think the behaviors that are shifting, we talked about the mixed or hybrid monetization model, moving from a singular approach to hybridization. In-app advertising is a huge opportunity, but again, the new cohort are happy to spend money, so you have to find that balance. You have to build a business model or a monetization model that works for that. But also outside of the games themselves, I think one of the things that we're looking at for 2021 for mobile gaming particularly, which has been done very well with some of the AAA franchises in console and PC, is about brand and what is brand to mobile gaming. And we're doing some work with our friends at Deconstructor of Fun, and they're sort of doing their prediction series for 2021 as they always do, and we've been talking to them a little bit about what is brand to mobile advertisers. I think that's interesting. But bottom line for me always comes back to, it's going to be about creative. I think, we didn't go into it. I'm glad we didn't go into it because it's just a hot button topic at the moment, but the changing ecosystem around data and privacy is going to mean that creative will be the turnkey solution in 2021 for advertisers, I think, in any business, because if people as the world becomes more choosing my words very carefully, as the ecosystem changes around data and privacy, we go back to some old school advertising, which is great creative. Maybe we don't know which part of it works, but you know that it will work. There's lots of people out there. There's lots of people to advertise to, and good creative is what gets people's attention.
Yeah, something we could do an entire other podcast specifically about that, about kind of the value of creative in this new ecosystem, particularly around gaming. Yeah. But like you said, that would be a 4 or 5 hour discussion. So, the length of an audiobook almost. So what else then is coming from Facebook Gaming, and where can the audience find you if they want more insights?
Well, this report is available, and we've fb.gg/ the Drum Report. We just made a bespoke URL for everybody who's listening to this. But if you visit fb.gg/marketers, there's a bunch of stuff available on our site there. From the previous report I mentioned, the Genre and Great Games report, there's also some work coming out in the next few months, which is very much speaks to what I've been saying about creative. We've done some really deep analysis of what people respond to in terms of creative, and we've come up, our colleagues at the Creative Shop within Facebook have come up with a great system for helping games advertisers build creative that people will respond to. So it's worth keeping an eye out for that. And then we'll be doing the rounds across Europe. We'll be at White Nights, we'll be at PGC, and delivering as much as we can, as much value to the industry as we can.
There's so much there to digest. I'm sure that everybody who goes and actually gets a copy of that report will need to take the time to actually sit and try to parse it, because there is so much data there. But for now, thank you both very much for sharing your expert insight about what those opportunities are for marketers and gamers themselves as well. So Tim and Natalia, thank you so much for joining us for this.
Thanks very much, Chris, and thanks, Natalia.
Thank you.